Start recording now. And should be okay. All right, so today the first thing I want to do is I've introduced a few of my team members. So in case you have not been on our trainings before, my name is Kayla Bodie. I'm the program manager here with the Division of Child Care in the background check unit. And so we process background checks for child care facilities and child welfare facilities. So if you have not spoken to me before, I just oversee our entire team. We've got a small team that does the background checks. And so we're working really diligently to make sure that we get people in your facilities and your foster and adoptive prospective parents so that we have safe people working with early childhood. And so today we're just going to go through the entire process. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box and we will be sure to answer that. We don't have too big of a group today, so that makes it a little easier to ask questions, and sometimes we can spend a little more time. And then at the end, of course, we will be taking questions. So I'm just going to start with the basics, and today we're going to talk about who needs a background check in child welfare facilities. So there are two separate kinds of regulations when it comes to child welfare. And we've got this handy guide here to help you kind of navigate who needs a background check and who needs what kind of background check. So we're going to break it up into two types of facilities. The first type of facility that you will see are facilities that are under contract with DCFS. Those facilities are accepting the 4E federal funding. Now, if you are not sure if your facility accepts this type of funding, you can reach out to your company's finance department. You can also reach out to your licensing specialist here with the division to ask if you're not sure. Typically that it's a federal funding, so typically your finance department would know, or just reach out to licensing and they will help you to determine if you're receiving that type of funding. And the reason that that is so important is that you'll see those facilities must have all background checks approved before they can begin working. So that includes your out-of-state maltreatment. Every portion of the background check must be completed. So your maltreatment for those facilities under contract with DCFS that are receiving that 4E federal funding, and your volunteers get a child maltreatment every 2 years. That's the same no matter what type of facility you are. Your criminal is going to be done every 2 years. That's your state criminal. And your FBI, your federal check, is going to be done at least one time per facility. If you move to another facility, you must get a new federal check. Those do not transfer between facilities. And so again, all background checks must be completed for those facilities that are under contract with DCFS and receive 4E funding before an applicant may begin. And the other part of this is that all background checks must be initiated within 10 days of employment. So when we talk about initiating, that means that if you are, you're going to have this person that's coming in and maybe they're going to be working for you, you need to go ahead and submit for those background checks within 10 days of employment. And that includes your out-of-state checks. All of those have to be initiated. And your federal check has not been initiated until they actually go and get fingerprinted. Does anyone have any questions about this first set of facilities, the ones that are receiving this funding and that must have all checks completed before they can begin? Okay, we're going to move on to our other type of placement residential facility. So these are all the other facilities that do not accept any type of funding from DCFS, the 4E funding. So all other placement residential facilities must also do a maltreatment every 2 years. Your criminal, so your state criminal, is done every 5 years. And your FBI is done 1 time per facility. So again, if that applicant moves down the road to a new facility that is not under the same ownership as your facility, they have to run a new background check. So the difference here for those facilities that are not receiving any of that type of funding, all background checks must be initiated within 10 days of employment. So again, your federal check is not initiated until the applicant goes and gets fingerprinted. They do not have to be overall approved before they begin working. So that is your main difference between the 2 types of facilities that we're looking at under child welfare. Any questions about the initiation of checks or what status they need to be in for working? You can ask in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask whatever, if you have any questions, whatever works best for you. And if you want to ask questions later, you can always email or call us and we'll be happy to discuss with you. Okay, so if we have no questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So now that we know who needs a check, we're going to talk about what is a permanently prohibited offense and what is a prohibited offense. So in your licensing requirement book, you'll find a full list in the Appendix B of prohibited offenses. This is going to be a very long list. You can look at all of those when you're in that hiring process or the interview process and you want to know what offenses are going to disqualify this person. Permanently prohibited offenses mean that no matter what the severity, if they were convicted of this, they are not eligible at all. Obviously, by looking at this, you can see this is a shorter list. It's things like sexual assault, kidnapping, murder, arson. These are going to be your severe charges. They are not going to be eligible to work at all. And then you're going to have just regular prohibited offenses. So these are just a few. There is a long list, but these are just a few things like theft of property, forgery, theft by receiving, aggravated assault. So these offenses that are listed under the prohibited list are only prohibited if they were a felony or a misdemeanor, and it has been 5 years since the date of conviction. So child welfare regulations, if they have any of the listed offenses and it is a felony, they're not eligible. If they have one of these, let's say a theft by receiving charge and it was a misdemeanor and it's been over 5 years and they have had no other charges in between the time period, then they would be eligible to work. And so we like to specify these because there may be an applicant that has a theft charge that was 10 years ago or 9 years ago and it was a misdemeanor. And someone may wonder, well, why are they eligible to work? Because there is a stipulation on time for misdemeanors. And then, of course, the applicants do have the option of going in front of the Child Welfare Board. If you as a facility want to request a waiver for this person, if they've been disqualified to work, you can take them in front of the board if you would like to do that. And we won't really go into a whole lot of detail about that. We don't do the board process, but if you do have an applicant that's disqualified and you need to know about going in front of the board, that's something you want to do, you can reach out to us or you can just call the main line here, the division, and they'll get you in contact with the Child Welfare Division and our placement residential licensing specialist so that they can help guide you on how to get on the board agenda. Any questions on prohibited offenses? And again, you can see that full list in the licensing in the requirement book. It's under Appendix B. Okay, So we're going to talk a little bit about the electronic background check system. All placement residential programs must use the online criminal background check system. You will see it called NICAR, National Information Consortium of Arkansas. You may see it called INA for Information Network of Arkansas. And most recently, they have been purchased by a company called Tyler Technologies. So the name may change again. However, we typically will just say the online background check system for generalization. A subscription account with the state police to run these background checks is $150 annually. That does not count the cost of the individual background checks. That is just strictly for your subscription. And then a background check through the online criminal background check system includes all of the following. So the state criminal background check is done immediately, and that includes your state sex offender registry check. If this is a brand new applicant that needs a federal, they will have the federal criminal background check done, and that will include the national sex offender registry check. So you're getting 4 different checks in the system, and that information comes directly here to our office. The last component of a background check for Arkansas is the child maltreatment registry check, and that is done separately. So it is completed online, but it's processed by the central registry. And we will have a slide later on when we get to that step with the information on how to submit and the link of where you need to go to do that. Any questions about the online system or the cost? Right. So now we are going to go step by step and talk about the process of submitting a background check. The very first step is to complete a request for criminal background check. It's an electronic form. You will also hear us refer to this as the consent form. That's exactly what this is. It is giving consent to process the background check. It is very important and the most vital part of this entire process. We see the most errors and not approvals due to incorrect information or data from these forms. So make sure you're taking your time. The link is here at the bottom. So if you were one of the people that wanted a copy of this, when I send it to you, it'll be really easy to pull up all of these links and just bookmark them. We tried to make that as simple as possible on the slideshow. And you're going to have a drop-down menu here for the reason for background check. And the child welfare has 3 different options. So you have placement residential agency for your employees, and then you have child welfare foster parent and child welfare adoptive. So make sure you select the correct option that you are going to be submitting this applicant for. And then of course, you're going to give the basic data that is needed for this applicant. So their name, date of birth, social, driver's license number, and some other demographic information. It's going to ask you for an email address, and once you submit, you will get a digital copy of this consent form. And here is what that consent form looks like. It is 3 total pages. It will have the applicant's information on page 1. Page 2 will be a notary section that is related to the state check. And page 3 is the federal check, the challenge information, and it is just a signature and a date. So again, like I said, this is the most critical portion that we see errors. A lot of times the notary date is incorrect, the applicant date, maybe they just didn't sign, or all 3 pages are not attached. And so that's when you see an immediate not approval within 24 to 48 business hours, because our office can't process it without the correct information. And some of you may be aware, I want to go ahead and just add this. There was a recent passed Senate Bill 212 was passed recently that is going to allow us to hopefully remove the notary section of these forms, which will be a huge help for not only you as a provider, but for us as well, since a lot of errors do come from that, it'll make things a lot simpler, a lot faster. Your applicant won't have to go and get this notarized. It'll just be the signature. We're currently working on what that form is going to look like and what the option for digital signature will be. So just keep an eye out for an update on that. It's not currently in place. As soon as it is, we will definitely be sure to send it out to all of our licensing team, and that way they can get it out to all of you as providers, and we'll make sure and update you on that as well. Ebony, I just saw your question about how soon. So the law has gone into effect. I don't have a specific date. We are just waiting on the Privacy Office and Office of Chief Counsel to give us the green light to change our form. Long-term care, I believe, sent out a memo. They just changed theirs yesterday. And so I would like to have it done by the end of this week, but as soon as we get the green light, our form will be changed. And that change should be immediate. It'll be very quick for us to update it. We're just trying to make sure that we get it right before we delete that option. And then of course we want it to look right when it comes to you. We would also like for there to be an option to digitally sign instead of having to print it out and then re-upload it, like scanning it back in. So we're working on trying to see what the best option is. But Ebony, I am fingers crossed that it'll be really soon. I would like for the end of this week. And as soon as that happens, we will notify everyone immediately so that you can get it all out to providers and to your team, and we will be blasting that out. And then of course, the links will all be updated. So it'll be an immediate effect. You won't have to go searching for a new form. So as of right now, continue to process the way that you are, continue to get your forms notarized as you are, because we have not gotten the corrected form yet. Hopefully we will have this soon. Any questions on the consent form? Any of this information that we are going over? I know that was kind of a lot when we talked about the new law change. It was something that was just recently done this legislative session, and so we're still kind of fresh and working on that. But if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Okay. So once you have your consent form completed, you're going to log into your NYCAR account. And when you set up the account, you'll get your own username and password. We've got the link here to the online system, and you will go here and log in. And then you will select the search tab. This tab is going to open the option for it's going to say perform a new search. And this is where you're going to input your applicant's information. So a lot of the same information that is on the consent form, I recommend to have a copy of their driver's license in front of you when you do this, so that you can make sure that the information you're putting in matches their ID. That's really important. If they go and get fingerprinted and the date of birth or their name does not match either their state issued ID or their passport, whatever they're using at the appointment, they will not be able to get fingerprinted. So I always just recommend to have that copy in front of you so you can get the correct information. And as you can see, the signed consent form will go here. That's where you will choose the file and upload the form that you just had completed. Your purpose should say CHW Child Welfare, and then you're going to have two search options. So when you have these two search options, your state only is going to be for those applicants that are renewing every 5 years or every 2 years, depending on your type of facility. If you need a state only and you select this option, go process it and you'll move on like normal. If this is a brand new employee or they have never had an FBI ran, you'll need to select FBI and state, and this will allow them to get fingerprinted. So if you select state only, It will give you an option for up to 2 weeks to add the FBI. So let's say you made a mistake, you accidentally left it on the search state only, but this is a brand new employee and they need to get fingerprinted. You will have 2 weeks to click run FBI, and then you can submit that applicant to get fingerprinted. If you don't go back and do that after 2 weeks, it will close. It will no longer be available. And then, of course, you would have to process the applicant a second time, in which you would have to pay a second time. So just make sure that you're picking the correct option. Of course, accidents do happen. So that's why there's that 2-week period where you can go and add that FBI. But just try to take your time on this section, because if you make a mistake and you are entering incorrect information, it could end up costing you the charge of having to resubmit, and then you're gonna have to pay another 36, I think it's $36.25 for the checks again. Charlie said, how can I add a new employee to be able to use this portal and submit checks? Yes, so Cindy and Brenda both put in the INA subscription phone number there. And Charlie, you can also log into your INA subscription account if you have the login information for that. I will see if I can, let me see if I can copy that link for you. You can log into your INA, the actual subscription account, and add up to 10 users there. Put the link here for you. But if you are not sure what your account information is to log into that, just call that phone number that Brenda and Cindy gave, and you can let them know what you need, and they can help kind of navigate you through that. So in your subscription charge, the $150 a year, that includes up to 10 people that you can add onto your account. And if you get stuck with anything, if they don't get you taken care of, give Cindy or me or Brenda a call, and we'll make sure and get that taken care of for you. So any questions on submitting your applicant's information on this page? Performing a new search. The next step is just to review your work. It's going to ask you, is all this information correct? And again, I will stress, be sure to review this information, make sure the date of birth is correct, make sure the name, first name and last name match the ID or passport, whatever they're going to use for identification. And the reason that we harp on this so much is because we so often will see, maybe your computer auto-corrects your date. So sometimes if you're typing in the birth date, it may auto-populate to 2023 instead of 1970. So if you do that and you go on to submit, there's no way to go back and edit that, and state police are not going to give you a refund. So I would just be sure and double check all of your information before you go on to submit your search. And then just a tip that if you need to go back to step 1, because maybe you caught that you entered some incorrect information, be sure that you attach that consent form again. And then once you submit, you're going to get your transaction number, and you will need to keep this for your fingerprinting. And your transaction number is going to be a CHW number. I know the screenshot shows a CHI, but it will start with CHW, which stands for Child Welfare. Okay, and then let's go on to any questions on submitting your applicant and receiving your transaction number. Okay, let's move on to scheduling fingerprints. So once you've got your transaction number, you're ready to schedule the fingerprints for this employee who needs an FBI. If they don't need an FBI, great, you can skip this part. But if this is a new employee, they've never been ran by your facility and they need their FBI, you can go to this link here. DHS fingerprint appointment link, and you can schedule that appointment. You will just click make appointment, and then your appointment type, the only option you should see is fingerprinting, and you will select that option. And then here you're going to be entering the information for the applicant. So the name. Then the next option is going to ask you for the ORI status, the 3-letter alpha prefix. And so like we just kind of discussed, for example, for childcare, there's a CHI. Yours will be CHW. And then you're going to enter the 9 digits that follow. So it should be a 0 and then a 0, and then a 7-digit number. Right now it starts with a 3. And then the very last question is going to ask you about an E number. If this is the first time submitting, you are going to skip that question. You don't have an E number. However, if this person's fingerprints were rejected, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, if they were rejected and you're scheduling their second appointment, this is where you will put that E number. So just kind of be aware that if that's something that comes up, that's where you'll put that information. It's not a required field, but if you are doing a rejection, you'll want to be sure and put that information here. Any questions about information that is being submitted to scheduling fingerprints? So your next option is going to be to select your location and your time. You should have several different times available. And then you're going to put in the applicant's information. So this is going to be their email, their phone number, and their first and last name. If they would like to receive text messages, you can check that box. And this is going to submit them a notification that it's been scheduled, and then it'll also give them some reminders. I recommend to use the applicant's information. I know sometimes as human resources, as directors, you know, we may want to put in our email to make sure that we get that because you are scheduling these appointments. However, if you're submitting multiple staff and you're putting in the same email address, it's going to give you an error after a few of those times because it thinks that it's the same person trying to schedule multiple fingerprint appointments. So if you're getting errors like that, use a different email address. I would just recommend to use the applicant so they're getting that confirmation, and you could have them forward that information to you, but to avoid any issues, I would use their information. And then our reminder to make sure the applicant presents their state issued ID and their transaction number to the technician. The identification must match. We already talked about making sure the information is correct. They will not be fingerprinted if it does not match. They can take either a driver's license, state issued ID, or a passport. Those are the 3 options that can be used for identification. Any questions about scheduling fingerprints or what they need to take to the fingerprint appointment? We're going to move on to the last part of the background check process. And this is the Arkansas Child Maltreatment Registry check. And again, no matter what type of program you are, this is done every 2 years. And your applicant must list 5 years of residency here in the event that they lived out of state in the last 5 years. And we will talk about the out of state process after this. We have the link here for the request, and I've also included the central registry contact information. They do process these checks. We review them to make sure that everything's been completed before we can approve a staff member or an applicant. However, we don't process those. So we do talk a little bit about this process and we do review that data, but we don't actually process the initial applicant and then the result that you get. So we have that contact information in case you have any errors. They are really quick at getting those results back. Typically, you should get those back within the same day. Sometimes I've heard people say they've gotten them back within 30 minutes to an hour. They're typically very quick. So if you have any issues where you're not getting it, definitely reach out to them. And on the maltreatments, the main point to take away is to be sure that you are selecting the correct option. So there are several options for why you're requesting a child maltreatment check. And you'll see that the second option says there is a potential or current employee of a child care or residential facility licensed by DHS. That will be the most frequently used option that you're going to select. And then the other option that you can select is the fourth option down, which is a potential foster parent for a private organization, including therapeutic foster care licensed by Arkansas DHS. So we are only able to view those options in the maltreatment registry. If you select, let's say you just go down to none of these apply, or if you select the option that you're a foster family support or volunteer with DCFS, we won't have the availability to view that, and you'll have to manually send us the results. So to make the process a little faster, be sure to select that second option. If it is for a foster parent, it is going to be the fourth option down. So just a little tip on that. Any questions about the child maltreatment? Okay, now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about rejected fingerprints. I think that this is something that doesn't happen very often. It just kind of depends. Some people's fingerprints get rejected. Sometimes it can be the way the fingerprints are taken. Maybe if there's a smudge, the FBI will reject them, but you should not have it happen very often. When it does, this is what you're going to see. You'll see at the very top right-hand portion where your status, where your FBI will normally say fingerprints complete, or maybe they say FBI, the fingerprints are pending. It will say FBI rejected. So when you see that, if you will click on the option that says view attached documents, it will open and give you an option for a rejection letter. And when you open this rejection letter, this notification from state police, it is going to look something like the one that I have a screenshot here on the right of, just to give you an example. It's going to tell you that this person's fingerprints have been rejected, and it's going to have the transaction and the E number. So let's say Sally Smith, she's got a rejection notification. It has her transaction, which would be CHW or CHI, and then it's going to have that E number. So when we were going back to where we were scheduling those fingerprints, and I said, you know, this is where you would put in the E number, this is where that number would go for scheduling. And then you will print a copy of this letter to take to the appointment. And then the applicant will go, they'll get fingerprinted that second time. And when the fingerprints go through to state police, they will send us the results directly. Now, this process does take a little bit more time because it is sent by messenger to our office. So be patient. If they get rejected, it may take a little bit more time than that instant completion that you're used to getting. The FBI reject, that status is going to remain the same. When we receive the results, we will update your overall status. So if that person was in provisional, it'll go, when we get the results, everything is clear, it'll go to approved. But it's still going to show FBI rejected at the top. It won't change. This is just something that the state police, it's still currently that way. That maybe in the future, if there's an update, that may change. But right now you'll still see that. I know sometimes people get confused and they say, well, it still says it's rejected. The only thing that really matters when you're looking at the eligibility for this person is the overall status. If it says approved, that means we've gotten the results and we've processed them manually on our end. So does anyone have questions about rejection or where to find the information? And Dee, I see Brenda answered your question. Yes, and either one of those options that you're choosing for your maltreatment, they're all going to go through the same central registry. So if you, whether you select 2 or 4, it's going through the same system. It's just a matter of who is able to view those results. So those 2 options will give us the availability, and that'll just kind of make things work a little faster for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so no questions about rejection. So we're going to move on to the next step. So if you have an applicant who has lived or worked out of state in the last 5 years, they are required to conduct a child maltreatment check in that state. So if they moved here from Missouri, you know, and they've only lived here for a few months or a couple of years, it hasn't been 5 years, they must complete a Missouri out-of-state child maltreatment check. This maltreatment check must be initiated. I just see that there is a spelling mistake. It must be initiated within 10 days of hire. So obviously you may not get the result back within 10 days, but you have to initiate that check. You can send proof that it's been initiated to our background check email address that's there on the screen. We've got out of state, that's just one mailbox that we use. So you can send that information there, and you can also send it directly to Cynthia Smith. That's kind of our 2 ways that you can get that information to us. If you are not sure how to request that information from that state, we have a portion of our website, and you see here at the bottom. So it's the out-of-state background check portion of our DHS website, and we have every state listed and the instructions for each state. There's also an interstate child care background check contact list that is used. That one, it's a great contact information, but it may be a little confusing because some of that information is specific to child care facilities. They have to run the criminal option as well. So if you go on our website, you would only be looking for the maltreatment or the child abuse and neglect check. And that's where you're a little bit separate. So you only do the child maltreatment. So any questions about the child maltreatment check and the out-of-state requirement? Ebony, I see your question or the overall results. So I don't have a screenshot with an actual overall. Do I? I think I do. I think it's at the end, Ebony. If not, I will find one and pull it up for you. So talking about these out-of-state requirements, there are a few states that are fairly simple. So Tennessee and Oklahoma, we will run here in our division. Theirs is a very simple search. And so we will put that information in and get that directly when we get the submission. California is a closed record state, so you do not need to do anything for California. We will also do that here in office. So those are your 3 exceptions. And if you ever have a question about what you need to do, again, you can go to our website. It's got instructions for every state. And if you still need some guidance or you find a link that isn't working or you're just confused on the process, please reach out to Cynthia or Brenda or myself, and we will do our best to help give you some guidance. And then sometimes we get a question about applicants who've lived in a different country in the last 5 years. There are no results that are needed from out of the country. So this only applies to within the United States. Any questions about that? And again, where do you send the results? So we have a background check email address. We have that mailbox. And then we have our mailing address and information on this slide for you if it is required to be mailed. Most states will send it via email or a portal, and you can just email us a copy. There are a few that require it to be mailed, so you can always use our mailing address. And Ebony, here's where I knew I had one somewhere. So here is where you will see the overall status. So if you look at the top right-hand corner of the screen, you will see the applicant's information. You will see the overall status is at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And you're not going to see the two buttons that say approved and not approved. Those buttons you're not going to have on your screen, but you are going to have the overall, and then next to it is going to be a provisional, approved, not approved. It may say pending if you just submitted this person, or maybe it's pending some more information on our end. But it's going to be at the bottom of that person's submission, the bottom right hand. It'll say overall question mark, and then it's going to have your status. So what do the status changes mean? The FBI status that you see at the top, there's a couple of different options. You're going to have fingerprints pending. This means the fingerprints has not been completed, and you're required to complete these within 10 business days. So make sure that once you submit your applicant, you go ahead and schedule them to get fingerprinted as quickly as possible. If the status says sent to Harvester next to the FBI, this means they've been processed, or there was some sort of an error in the fingerprinting technique or submission. If it says sent to Harvester for longer than 24 hours, please give us a call, because there may be an issue that we need to check into. On your overall status at the bottom of your page, if it's pending, that just means that it's in process. We may be gathering additional data. If it is provisional, the submission is not completed. So for example, the fingerprints may be pending. Maybe you need to do your child maltreatment, or maybe we're waiting on out-of-state results. And then not approved, so the applicant may not begin working. This is either because the applicant is not eligible for employment, the documentation uploaded is incorrect, so there's an error with that consent form, or you did not initiate all checks within 10 business days. And if that's the case, just give us a call. We can take a look at it and let you know. Laura, I see your question. So on those two options, so the link that says view, that is eventually possibly going to be a letter for you to print for eligibility. It is not functional. So right now, if you click it, it's going to tell you it's like an error and there's nothing there. On the view attached document, that is where you will go to see your consent form. So the one that you uploaded is the initial start process. And then if you have a rejection, so that person's fingerprints are rejection, this is where state police or our team will upload the rejection notification. So there are a few documents that could possibly be there under your view attached documents. And if you ever get a not approved and you think it may be something to do with the consent form, you can click on that view attached document and you can pull up your consent form and see, and maybe you just left off a page, or maybe you see an error, and just get it corrected, and you can send it directly to Cynthia and she can get it uploaded for you. So sometimes we have providers that immediately notice that it got not approved that next day and they just submitted this person yesterday. And so they go to look at their consent form and they see, oh, I left off a date, or maybe I accidentally left off the last page, and they'll rescan and just send it to us. You can do that and just include your search ID number, and you can email it directly to us, correct it, and then we can attach it for you. So great question. So if you are unsure of a status, you're unsure of what could be missing, you have not received an email from us or anything letting you know what is needed, call us. We are here to help. I have our main line number there at the bottom, and I'll have it again at the end of the slide. But anytime you have questions, go ahead and call our main line, let them know that you have a question, and they will get you to whoever's available on our team. And you can also call us directly. I think Brenda, Cynthia's information is in the chat box, and my information will be as well. And then we're going to move on. So here are some things that we can't stress enough. When you're looking for the status of your applicant, be sure to log into your account. It can change very quickly. You could looked at it, yesterday, and we could have already had it processed today. So just make sure you look. You should get an email, but double check. And then if you're looking at the status and you're wondering what it means, give us a call. Make sure all information is correct before submitting. So the name, date of birth must match your state issued ID or passport. Incorrect data entry will not be refunded by Arkansas State Police. When a staff member is no longer employed and they are still provisional in your system, let us know. You can send us an email, give us a call, tell us the search ID number, and just say, this person is no longer employed. And what we'll do is we will not approve them, and we will move them out of our queue of what needs to be worked. That'll just kind of free up some space for us to get to the other ones. So just be sure, let us know if they're no longer there. If they've already been approved or they're already not approved, that's okay. It's mainly if they're in provisional or pending, and then you decide they're either not going to work there or maybe they part ways. So when you're emailing, just please include the search ID number. That will help us locate the correct applicant much faster. So that search ID number, remember, starts with a 3 right now. It's 7 digits. And then again, applicants working in placement and residential agencies must have a federal FBI background check done at least one time at that agency. Any questions about any of that information? I'm going to put some important phone numbers on here. So that's our main line for the background check unit. If you have questions specific to your subscription account, so maybe you need a copy of an invoice, payment, you can't get logged into your account, forgot your password, adding additional users, any of that type of thing, that subscription account will be able to help you remedy that. Our unit here, we do not have access to your subscription information, so we won't be able to help with your username or payment. The NYCAR help desk is for any kind of technical issues that you may be having. Maybe you submitted an applicant and you see that they're pending in your pending tab, or maybe there's some issues with getting them scheduled for fingerprints. Maybe they didn't come up in your history. That would be more for specific technical issues. If you're just curious about the status or why it hasn't been updated, give us a call and we will troubleshoot with you first. And then of course the central registry, and that is for your child maltreatment checks. Okay. So possible delays in the process. I won't read every single thing to you, but if the person has been pending for a significant amount of time, it may mean that we're asking for additional information from that applicant. If they've been provisional for a while, it may be because they haven't gotten fingerprints were completed. Maybe they were rejected. We may be asking for more information from the applicant. Check to make sure child maltreatment has been submitted and that out-of-state checks have been completed. those are all reasons that it would still be in provisional. If you get a not approval and it has been, 24, 72 hour, business hours that you submitted, let's say you submit Sally Smith today, and then tomorrow you get a not approval, reach out to us. It's definitely going to be an issue with the consent form or data entry. So, and the reason is because if the applicant has a disqualifying offense and they're prohibited, we give them due process. So they have at least 10 business days to get back with us after we send them notification before we'll make any changes in the system. And so if you're getting that not approval immediately after submitting, that means there's an issue either with data or there's an issue with the consent that's been uploaded. And you'll see most, 1 through, I would say 5 to 6 is going to be issues with either the notary stamp or missing a signature on the consent, not putting in your facility name or your facility number. And then lastly, fingerprints or the maltreatment has not been completed within 10 days of submission. So when you go to submit your applicant, I would immediately the same day go ahead and schedule your fingerprints to be done. And again, here is the main number for our division. And Ebony has put her contact information as well. So Ebony is the program manager here with Placement Residential. Ebony, do you have anything you want to add?
No, ma'am. I think you've done a very good job. Good job, Kayla.
Well, I'm glad you're here joining us. So Ebony's information is there. If you can't get a hold of me, Brenda or Cindy, reach out to her. She will get a hold of one of us. I mean, we will make sure that someone gets you taken care of. If you have questions about anything regarding your licensing, if you have questions, if you don't know if you accept 4E funding, you don't know if you have a contract, reach out. Ebony will look into it. I will look into it. We will find out what you are required to do if you're not sure. So feel free to give us a call anytime you have questions. If you think that someone should be completed and they haven't been yet, please reach out to us. We want to help. We want to get people approved as quickly and efficiently as possible. We know that you need staff immediately, and so we want to help. Are there any questions about maybe a topic that we did not talk about today? Any lingering specific questions that we can help with? Okay. Ebony, is there anything that you want me to go over that I didn't go over, or do you have any announcement, anything before we close out?
No, ma'am, I do not have any announcements at this time. I'm sure there will be some to come later, but of course we'll let everyone know. But thank you very much, Kayla.
Yes, and I will keep everyone updated on the notarization, the new law about that. I will keep you updated. Ebony will probably be the first to know, and she will definitely send out something, and we'll announce at any meetings. We'll get that information out to you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking time. I know you're very busy. Thank you so much for everything you do for children in the state of Arkansas, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. If you need anything, give us a call. Bye.